Hey there, my name is Tim Stoddart, and in this week's video, I am going to teach you how to create an agency flywheel. This is a concept that I've used over and over again in my agency and in my businesses, and by the end of this video, I hope that you can take these tactics and implement them into your business as well. I call this going into machine mode. So let's dive right into it. We have a lot to cover in this video, and so I have put this outline together. If you want to make a copy of this outline, just simply click the Google Doc in the description of the video, click on File, make a copy, and this is yours. So, machine mode, how to create a flywheel that prints cash. Before I really dive into the tactics here, I have to start with a story because the concept of a flywheel is not an original idea by me. This was something that I learned by a friend of mine, Nathan Barry. And this whole experience had a really big impact. So I'm going to tell you the experience that I had and this how like I learned about this concept of a flywheel, and then I'll teach you how I have used it for my own agency and how it's really turned into something specific to me and to my businesses. So here's a story. About 3 years ago, I attended Craft and Converse. It's a conference held every year by ConvertKit, now known as Kit. And it was like a really amazing experience. The reason it was an amazing experience is because I had invested in this company right here called Sparkloop. And Sparkloop is like it's a recommendations platform for newsletters. And when Nathan right here, Nathan Barry, he's the founder and the CEO of Kit, and when he was giving his presentation, he had the keynote slot on the first day, and he was giving all of these announcements, and he was talking about how Kit had created this creator network and how they had built like an ad platform. So they'll sell sponsorships for your newsletter for you. They'll basically act as your team. And how they have Sparkloop, which is like this recommendations platform. And I had invested in Sparkloop. This was the first time I ever made a seed round investment that like paid off for me. And I was standing in the very back of I don't know what you call it, the auditorium, the main stage next to Louis. Louis is the founder of Sparkloop. And it was just a really cool moment, like I really, really loved being there and loved being there with Louis. And I felt really proud of what we had done. However, through the presentation, the whole point of this is that Nathan right here, he gave a presentation about what he called the creator flywheel. So I'm going to explain to you the creator flywheel first, and then I'm going to transition into what I call the agency flywheel. Nathan started off he started off his presentation, with a story about some missionary work that he had done in Africa. If anybody knows Nathan, he's definitely like the kind of guy that just wants to serve the world, and it wasn't a surprise to me. And they were building wells, they were building water wells and building pumps. I think it was for the pygmies. And he talks about this realization that he had where you can build this kind of a pump. This is just a linear hand pump. And if you look at it from a physics standpoint, but also just from a life standpoint, there's not a lot of leverage in this pump, right? Because every single time you pump the lever, you get a certain amount of water for it. So they're equal. Every unit of input of energy spent, you get the same exact unit of output of the water that comes out of the pump. And so there's a better way to do this. There's a better design. And this uses the laws of physics. It essentially uses like momentum and centrifugal force, where if you put the pump on a flywheel, well, yes, it's difficult to get the thing going. But once it gets going, once it has force behind it, the faster it goes, the easier it is to make it go faster. Right. So it's not just that it's a better design. It's there's physics on your side, because once it gets some momentum, it gets easier and easier and easier to get more momentum. And so, from a business standpoint, this is leverage, right? This is how you create something that is more money in exchange for less time. And then you spend even less time and you make even more money. So, his concept, well, this is right here. This was the GIF or the GIF, whatever it is, that he used in his exact presentation. You can just see the difference between the two. And so, for Nathan's standpoint, there's three different stages of growth. And by the way, I took this screenshot from his YouTube video that he did about this. I'll make it a little bit bigger. His studio is like pretty dark. And so there's three stages of growth. They're scattered, which means you're basically getting started. There's no system, there's no SOPs. You're doing all of the different things all at the same time without any organization. Then there's linear. And linear is definitely a step forward. This is basically what happens when you create SOPs and you create systems and processes and your workflow. If anybody who's a member of my community, the machine method, you'll know what I mean by workflow, but it smoothly transitions from like one department to another. And then last is the flywheel. Growth compounds because each input reinforces multiple outputs. So it's the same exact thing here. Like the faster it goes, the faster it goes. The bigger it gets, the bigger it gets, right? Okay. And so with the flywheel, there's three different laws. There's flow. Each step must naturally lead into the next. Ease. Less friction makes the wheel spin faster. Growth, momentum builds over time, and each cycle is bigger than the last. And so, like I said, if you want to get you don't have to take this directly from me. This is all part of Nathan's creator flywheel strategy. And by the way, let me give him a little bit of a shout out. If you want to learn more about the creator flywheel, then go to creatorflywheels.com. I think he has a whole course or a whole, what do you call it, workshop where he teaches this whole method, and it's really great for you to learn. Okay. The example that he always uses is Sahil Bloom, because Sahil Bloom was kind of like the guinea pig for testing out these new ConvertKit products, which was the newsletter. It was Sparkloop, which was the recommendations platform, and then there was the sales platform, which, like I said, ConvertKit basically sold ads for Sahil's newsletter, and they took a cut of it. And so the idea is that Sahil sends out his newsletter, right? He gets newsletter sponsorships from the ConvertKit sponsorship network. He takes that revenue and he invests it into the partner network. So now he gets more subscribers. This leads to new subscribers, which means that in the next newsletter, he charges more money for sponsorships, which means that he has more money to invest into his recommendations platform, into the partner network, which means he gets even more subscribers. Around and around and around it goes. So this fits three laws, right? This fits the flow. Each one goes naturally into the next. This fits the ease. The less friction makes the wheel spin faster, and this fuels the growth where every cycle is bigger than the last. So now that you understand the creator flywheel, I want to take a minute to explain the experience I had. Like I said, I was standing at the back of the auditorium and I was standing next to Louis, and this thing just hit me as though I had been punched in the face. I realized that accidentally I had created a flywheel for my agency. The only difference was I did it through client services, through directories, which is a program. Again, people that are members of the paid machine method network, people that have purchased a launchpad, they know what I mean by a program. And I had a newsletter. And so I basically created this agency flywheel that made me dominate an industry and made me dominate a certain vertical. And so then the bigger it got, the bigger it got. And then I realized that I had built this agency flywheel and created another flywheel around it. I know I'm getting kind of esoteric here, but stay with me, where the revenue from the agency flywheel was always reinvested into other companies, into my holdings company. And then the profits that were generated from the investments that I made was its own flywheel. So I know that that sounds a little bit deep and hard to visualize, but believe me, it's not. Let me show you exactly what I mean. This right here is the agency flywheel. It works because it follows the laws. There's flow, there's ease, and there's growth. And so I'm going to make this bigger again. Forgive me for my terrible design. Like I'm not a designer, and I couldn't lighten this thing up without losing the boldness of the font. But this is how it works. It starts with my agency. Everybody that follows me, they know that I really recommend you start your entrepreneurial career with an agency. The reason is because they generate cash. And once you have cash, you can start your agency flywheel. So you get your first clients. And in the Launchpad, I really talk about how in the beginning you just brute force your first couple clients. I explained to you how to do all this. But let's just say you get your first clients, you make your first $5,000 a month. Well, slowly, you start to build some authority in your space. This is another reason why it's so important to work within a specific vertical, because then you just own a space, right? You don't have to be an expert in a million different things. You can ratchet the flywheel. You can really reinforce and create leverage in your industry because it's the only thing that you're focusing on. So you gain some authority and then you build your newsletter. Your subscribers then turn into directory sales. So for me, a lot of people know that my directories are here, right? Let's go to recoverylocal.org. And this is my previous agency that I sold. Oh my gosh, they redesigned the website. Good for them. Wow. Okay, and so a lot of people know that all of this, that this agency is, well, I don't have anything to do with it anymore. I sold my stake in it, but this is how the flywheel worked. We would get leads from our directories, and the directories themselves would generate cash, right? But in addition, these directory sales would generate reputation and they would generate authority, which would lead to more clients. And then the more clients would generate more authority, which would lead to more email subscribers. We used to get a ton of new business through the email list. It looks like they don't have the email pop up anymore, which is, obviously totally fine. And the email subscribers would generate more directory sales. So this whole entire agency flywheel would just ratchet on itself. And it was all because I didn't do this by myself by any means. Like Brian and Trisha were a huge part of it. They're the ones that are still running Stasi now. We created this flywheel, this like self-fulfilling prophecy where the bigger it got, the bigger it got. The thing that I did and the unlock that I had, which is what I call going into machine mode, is I really, really appreciated the cash and the profits. I'm kind of like I don't know, I'm a frugal person, right? And so I saved a lot of my money and I reinvested almost all of the money I made into my holdings company. And so these days, my holdings company is called Blue and Hazel Holdings. If you go to my newsletter, timstyles.com, you can see my portfolio right here. This is how I've made all of the investments that I've had. So Quantum Leads, this is obviously my new agency. I wouldn't say this counts as an investment. This is my agency. So this is part of the agency flywheel right here. This is where I generate my clients. All right. But Atman Global, so this is a hospitality brand. It's a hotel that we have in Costa Rica, but in addition, it's a retreat company. I got really, really fascinated through an experience that my wife had. I'm sure many of you guys have seen that video about plant medicine and psychedelics and like the healing properties of them. And so we created this monthly retreat in Costa Rica, and it's absolutely beautiful and it's amazing. This company is not quite profitable yet, at least not to the extent that we can give out distributions, but even still, this is like a really valuable piece of my portfolio now. And in addition to that, Right Path Rehab. So this is a treatment facility that my team and I have purchased in San Diego. And once again, you can see that these are all kind of part of the same vertical. I'm into healthcare, I'm into holistics, I'm into treatment, behavioral healthcare treatment. And this whole entire machine mode flywheel spins around and around and around. You can see some more examples. There's Copyblogger, there's digital commerce, there's Kit, obviously, ConvertKit. I've cashed out on a couple, right? So you can see here, Stasi Internet Marketing. This was the agency that I just talked about where I was able to cash out. Tulip Hill Healthcare. This was a behavioral healthcare conglomerate based out of Tennessee and Kentucky, which I founded and I had a lot of success with, and I still really appreciate the team over there. They're doing great work. I personally exited it. And so there's two parts to this. And like I said, this is something that I've just thought about over the course of the last 4 years, ever since I watched Nathan's presentation about the creator flywheel. I realized that what I had built was an agency flywheel. And it always goes off of these three things. If you join the Launchpad, you'll see there's a 7-figure agency course, the 7-figure newsletter course, and the 7-figure directories course. And those are the three methods that I choose to build businesses around. So there was the clients, the agency, which builds authority, which leads to newsletter subscribers, which leads to directory sales, which leads to more authority, right? And around and around and around it goes. But the genius unlock that I had, humbly, is that the agency flywheel was just a piece of the machine mode flywheel, where now the whole entire thing ratchets around and around and around. And the more cash flow the agency flywheel generates, the more ammunition I have to build into my holdings company. And anybody that has generated any kind of wealth knows that you don't get wealthy from what you do, you get wealthy from what you own. And so this has created my holdings company, my personal holdings company, my investment portfolio. Like I said, it's called Blue and Hazel Holdings. It's named after my kids because I have hazel eyes and my son somehow was born with hazel eyes and my wife has bright blue eyes and my daughter was somehow born with bright blue eyes. So Blue and Hazel Holdings. This is how I've created wealth, and this is how I basically built a machine that generates profits for me every single month without me having to work harder and harder and harder to generate those profits. I really, really hope you guys see after all of these weeks and months why I've advocated so much for you to build newsletters, build directories, and build agency businesses. Because once you create this agency flywheel, this is just your cash flow mechanism to build your investments and to build your portfolio. Thank you so much for watching this video. I don't anticipate this video is going to go viral, but it's a video that I think I'm most excited about publishing because this concept has completely changed my life. This is how I've generated my wealth. And, a lot of people ask me, like, how do you do so much? How do you do so much? The truth is, I don't do that much. I just focus on the flywheel and I build the leverage, I build the team, I build the skill set, I build ownership in a certain set of verticals. And then the rest just happens by itself. This is why I call it machine mode. This is how you get output without having to put in matching input. This is how you get more money for less time, more money for less work. It's not a pipe dream. I've done it. If you have any questions, please ask them. My only hope is that you can use this as inspiration to build your own machine method and to go into machine mode yourself. Thanks for watching.